Good morning. It's Sunday, November 21st. And on Friday, Kyle Rittenhouse was declared not guilty by a jury of 12 who deliberated this case for 25 hours. And he was found not guilty on all 5 charges he faced. Rittenhouse was charged with 5 different felonies: first-degree intentional homicide, first-degree reckless homicide, attempted first-degree intentional homicide, and 2 counts of first-degree reckless endangering safety in society. Now, this trial has gone on for 2 weeks, and all of America was watching it. I don't know if they were watching every minute of it, but it was on TV quite often. And what we have to understand, and when I talk about we, I'm talking about the people of New York. The people of New York invariably believed that Rittenhouse was guilty. But you have to understand that state laws are different. People's upbringing is much different. Wisconsin is not New York. Wisconsin is allowed. In Wisconsin, you're allowed to carry a gun. He was not doing anything illegal by carrying this AR-15 around with him. Guns are a way of life in Wisconsin. We must understand that. The other thing that we must understand is that in Wisconsin, the right to defend yourself is not the same as the right to defend yourself in New York. The jury believed that Rittenhouse was a victim. They thought that his self-defense claim was a lot stronger than the prosecution's claim of provocation. In Wisconsin, the law allows the use of deadly force, only if necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. So obviously, Rittenhouse was able to prove to the jury that he was claiming self-defense and that state law meant that the burden fell on the prosecutors to disprove that Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. And obviously, the prosecutors were not able to do that. Looking through all of the footage that was shown, all of the video that they watched, they couldn't come up with that. So it was an uphill battle from the very beginning, because the facts in this case did not prove that Rittenhouse was an aggressor. They weren't able to show that his actions were those of a man intent to kill people. And they didn't prove, the prosecutors did not prove, that Rittenhouse's actions were unreasonable and that his belief that the threats were really threats. So once again I say, we're in New York and we look at things much differently here. We don't allow people to wander the streets in New York carrying an AR-15 around. This is not an open carry state. And we have to recognize that laws are different in many states. We have a retreat or a do not retreat. There's stand your ground states like Texas and other states. Now, Wisconsin is not a total stand your ground state, but they're not a total retreat state either, based upon what I read. So as far as the jury was concerned, and they watched the video frame by frame, they were looking to see if Kyle did something to provoke the threat, and apparently they didn't feel that he did. They felt that he was the one threatened. In fact, one of the men, Grosskreutz, who was wounded, did not die, but he testified he pointed a pistol at Rittenhouse, and later said, I didn't really point it at him, I just waved it around, But, who knows? Who knows if somebody had a pistol and they're waving it around if you don't perceive that as a threat? Anyhow, the prosecution didn't do a very good job. And the judge appeared to favor the defense throughout the trial. But I don't know how much that affected the jury's thinking. I think they came from that region of the country and they recognized the fact that guns are a way of life. And you probably have to do a lot more to prove that you weren't defending yourself, but that you were taking a life indiscriminately. So I don't know. I think most of the country is upset with this verdict, and certainly many of the people who were involved in the riot or the rally that was taking place in Kenosha are very unhappy with this verdict too. But this is the law. This is the law that we live by in these states. This is the law. I don't want to say it's the law of the land because we have 50 different states and they all have different laws about guns and gun control. And this is an example of how little we in New York understand about the rest of the 50 states. So in my mind, this was a bad verdict. But in the law in Wisconsin, it was probably a good verdict. And there were many who said that Rittenhouse did the correct thing. And certainly the Republican senators from Wisconsin agreed with the verdict. And so did most of the other Republican senators around and congressmen around. And of course the Democrats didn't agree with the verdict. And that shows you that this particular case goes at the heart of what this country is all about right now. And it's a terrible thing. But the prosecution did a terrible job on it. They couldn't convince the jurors beyond a reasonable doubt. And how could they do that anyhow? How could the prosecution do that if they had no real provocation evidence, right? There wasn't a real trial lawyer that didn't feel that this was an amazingly good defense. So I leave you with that for this morning. Something that I wished had turned out differently. Because it was a shanda that a young man of 17 could wander the streets with an AR-15, kill 2 people, wound a third, get away with it. Somehow or other, there's something wrong with that story. Because in looking at the video, I don't know. I don't know how much he was really threatened by the movements of the people he shot. There's nothing that came to the fore in this trial that showed that he was on edge. You know, if you're on edge, a little twitch could set you off. But the defense, they did the job, and the prosecution didn't do their job very well. So, that's what I have this morning, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.